to the world to keep educating people in the United States to have ever higher education when there were millions of people around the world didn't know how to read or write. At the very least, educated people in the United States should go volunteer to teach other people to read and write. He had devised a special system for doing that. So I thought I liked that idea. So I decided I would, when the time came, I would volunteer for missionary work.
For literacy specifically?
Well, it didn't have to be literacy.
Okay.
I would make part of my work literacy teaching. I knew that missionaries often did both. So the next summer, 3 of my college buddies and I purchased an old car and drove the Alcan Highway ourselves. 4 drivers, day and night. We did it in 5 days. Finally, the engine was so hot that when you turned off the ignition, it just kept running by itself.
Was it a diesel?
No. Old Chevrolet, 41 Chevrolet. And then we worked, they were working construction. The Korean War broke out, and I was working for the National Guard. And I was a little, I've told you this, I was a little, felt a little guilty about missing World War II because I was thinking about seminary and was more or less a pacifist.
But you were too young to go to
I was too young.
World War II.
Actually. But that's the way I felt, that I should have been doing something more to help the war, is what I thought. So then the question was, should I volunteer to join now when the Korean War was started? Or should I go to seminary, because I was pre-enrolled at the seminary by that time. And so I knew I wouldn't be drafted. So I've told you this before, but anyway, I asked my boss at the office, National Guard office, what I should do. And he said to the effect, "Oh, Lindberg, don't join, don't join." And I said, "Why not?" And he said, "You'll demoralize the troops. we know that your heart wouldn't be in it. So if you want to be in the Army, go back to seminary and graduate and become a chaplain. Then we'll know what we've got. But if you're just in the ranks of the Army, you're not doing us any good." So that sounded pretty good. My last guilt feeling went away on not helping in the war. And that summer, then the other, Don and Dean Berg were along, and Bill Reber, another student, was along. So they were mainly doing construction work. Did Harold come up one more summer? I get confused, so I had anyway. There was a whole working gang of us by that time. 4 or 5 people. We had a car to use. We didn't have to hitchhike back and forth to work. So we all drove back to seminary. And Hazel and my mother took me down to seminary.
In Rock Islands.
Rock Island. So Rock and Dean and Don who had been with me in Alaska then were my roommates. So each suite took 3 people, so we were Berg, and Lindberg.
Hmm.
And across the hall was Earl Berg, Roy Gustafson, and Herb Swanson. Was it Herb? No, Norm Erickson. They got to be close friends too. So we did our seminary work, and the first Christmas they had Christmas calls for people who might be interested in serving a church over Christmas because the pastor, it was usually a church where the pastor had other duties, and they especially wanted people to visit people in their homes because Augustana had the habit that a pastor should visit the parishioners every year. If you didn't get it done before, why you should do it at Christmas time. At least you would get coffee and rolls and stuff if you did it. So I signed up for that. And then my assignment was Oil City, where I met Alma's family and visited their home as part of my duties. And became very interested in her. She was planning to be a nurse, but I thought if I could follow up on this, it'd be nice to have her around. So I told her parents who wanted her to go to nursing school that if she went to Augustana College, she could still become a nurse at the end. They had a double program. You could be both a nurse and a teacher or whatever else you wanted to be. They were afraid she was going to marry a Roman Catholic. So one of her aunts said, if there's a Roman Catholic in the Quad Cities, Alma will find him and marry him. So they were somewhat relieved that at least there were some Lutheran possibilities there.
Why this fear about Roman Catholics?
Well, in Oil City it was really strong negative feelings that one of her aunts had loved a Roman Catholic and her parents put down their feet, and she never did marry. She ended up an old maid. Pretty bitter about it.
Hmm.
I don't know, people in that day, I mean, it's hard for us to imagine it today. But like Barbara, one of her mother's sisters, when she was growing up, dated a Catholic in Spring Valley, Wisconsin. And when she came home from it, her mother said, "You can sleep in the outhouse tonight. No daughter of mine is going to sleep in this house if she's been out with a Roman Catholic." You don't get much more rigid than that.
No, that's pretty rigid.
So anyway, I went back to Oil City to visit Alma a couple times that year. She did come to Rock Island. We didn't date very much. And that summer, before the next summer, I was signed up to do chaplaincy work in Nebraska, and I was going to meet Joanne.
She was a nurse there at that hospital where you were chaplain in training.
Yeah, Hastings State Hospital. I was doing it as a summer job. It was her psychiatric nursing rotation.
Hmm.
So then I started dating her. And I hadn't been dating Alma Ruth anymore. I would see her once in a while at college, but not on a date or anything. So I got married, and she got married later too, and she graduated afterwards, met somebody else. So I never gave Joanne, that's one kind of regret I have, a choice about becoming a missionary. I said we were going to become missionaries.
This is after you got married, or?
Yeah. Well, we talked about it beforehand. But I was definitely interested in becoming a missionary.
She figured she would have some say in the matter, and the way it played out, she didn't really have that.
I should have listened more, but she had some misgivings about it. So that's a regret I had. I think I would have been the same way if I had continued with Alma Ruth, that we're going to go to missionary work whether we like it or not, or you like it or not. So anyway, I signed up for Africa, and 2 other members of our class signed up for Japan.
Who were those two?
Carl Byerhill, I don't know if you ever met him, probably not. Don Truitt and Earlberg signed up but wasn't sent anywhere because he wasn't married. He wanted to come to Japan. So I had wanted to go to Africa. I had signed up for Africa, but I was assigned to Japan. So I went to language school in Tokyo, but that was hard on Joanne. She went to language school too, but didn't really finish it very well.
Because she was pregnant with me, and
She was. Just the stress, I think, of living. I mean, it wasn't so stressful to me. I wanted to be there. The first Christmas I did a dumb thing. I signed up to go to Korea. I was dumb to stay away from Chris and Joanne. But,
is that just before I was born, or
yeah. No, the summer, the Christmas before.
a year before I was born? So
Christmas.
Chris was about a year old at that point.
Yes, right. But in Japan, I was a little disillusioned. I was now next to being a chaplain. I had a temporary uniform. I had a cross on my lapels, and I told you this story, but I just want to tell it for.
See if we
Okay.
get this going. What's that?
Okay to tell this story.
Yeah, go ahead.
A Catholic chaplain and I were assigned to do Christmas services along the line between North and South Korea. We were on a little Beaver airplane bouncing along from one camp to the next. And at one of the camps, after the service, Christmas service, we were all invited to the officers' club. We were considered officers.
Hey, 1 second. Hey, Chris, Alma's down there. Do you see her in the down on the far to the right? I was pointing to her. Sorry, go ahead.
So we were sitting in the officers' club. Announcement came, ladies and gentlemen, we have a treat for you tonight. We have Korean girls to be your companions. And our medical officers have examined them. They are all clean girls. It's the courtesy of your government have provided these girls. I realized the other thing they had provided was us, the temporary chaplains. So we were in the same category with the girls.
Hmm.
sit with. One of them sat down in the lap of the Catholic chaplain. The Catholic chaplain and I were sitting at the same table. But she picked him instead of me. She put her head on his chest. It was going up his chest. She came up to his neck and saw the cross. She said, "Oh my God." She says, "And I'm a Catholic too," she said. She realized she was snuggling up to a priest.
Well, that's not going to work, huh?
that relationship broke off very quickly.
Yeah.
That was my most emotional feeling in the part of the Korean War.
Mhm. So you were quickly back to Japan then.
Yeah.
I was born.
You were born the night of the robber. Of course, that was a significant point.
Hmm.
Chris was sick. That was why the lights were on. We were up on the second floor. And Joanne was getting up from time to time to check on him. And one of the times he must have made a little noise because I opened my eyes. And we were sleeping on the floor, Japanese style. So when I opened my eyes, he was standing at the dresser. His black gloved hand was reaching for my wallet. I left my wallet out on the dresser. I've never done that again, by the way. I saw this black hand reaching. The only thing I could think of was Grandpa chasing the hawks away from the chickens. Sometimes the hawks would come after chickens if they weren't in the hen house. And he would come running out with the shotgun and shouting, "Get away, get away." So I didn't have a shotgun, but I got up and was going to chase this hawk that was going to take my wallet.
Hmm.
And he ran into the paper doors, and there was a Japanese house. The doors fell down. They always fall down in Japanese movies too.
Hmm.
He ran down the hall, and I ran after him, and then he went down the dark stairway, and then
It should quit in a minute.
what's that?
The background noise, we were trying to get the fan off so we can hear you better.
Anyway,
Sorry about that.
No worries.
my courage failed me, and I decided I wasn't going to practice hot pursuit. And then that was when, during the night, when Joanne had her first pains for you,
Mhm.
so we went into the hospital that morning. You were born. 2 days later, the mailman came with my wallet.
Hmm.
The thief had taken the money, but had left all my cards, which were really more important to me than the money. I only had maybe $50 in it, but it was my international driver's license and my visa and my passport and all kinds of things.
Yeah.
So he kindly dropped that off in
Yeah.
the post office box.
So then, how long were you in Tokyo then before you moved to Kyoto?
Didn't go to Fukuoka. We went to Yanai first. We never went to Kyoto.
Wasn't Sue born in Kyoto?
Yeah, but that was after we were living actually back in, where were we living? We were in Yanai or in Fukuyama. We were still in Japan, but it was the first term. I think that was the second year. Yeah, we were in Fukuyama by that time.
So she just went to Kyoto because there was better medical care there or something?
Right, that's where most of the missionaries went if they didn't have the babies at home. Teresa, was born at home.
Hmm.
But, But before that summer, we went on that trip to Hong Kong. And the reason we did that was we went to a movie in Tokyo when we were still in Tokyo called Love is a Many Splendored Thing. Have you ever seen that movie? It's a romance about Hong Kong. It was so beautiful on the film that we decided we'd like to do that. So we took you and Chris to Hong Kong. Suzanne wasn't born yet. Visited the missionaries there. Then in Fukuyama, where we moved, after a year in Yanai, that was kind of like a Japanese internship. We moved to Fukuyama. And there was an old farmer with a big beard who was a Christian. He welcomed us to Fukuyama. And on one of my visits with him, he offered me sake to drink. And I didn't drink, but I thought it was important to share that experience with him, so I drank sake with him. When I told Joanne about that, she had a fit. Like I wasn't fit to be a missionary if I would sit and drink sake with an old man. So I think that's when she lost faith in my being a missionary.
Mm. And didn't you make your glug when you were in seminary?
No, I didn't make glug until
Well,
after we were back
I see.
living in Rock Island.
Mm. So it was when you were a seminary professor that you were making
Right.
not as a student.
But meanwhile, Augustana merged with the United Lutheran Church, and they didn't have any ban against drinking, as long as you drank in moderation.
Oh, was there a ban up until that point for the Augustana Church?
Well, pretty much. Pretty much. When I was still in still in high school, Grandma Lindberg had signed me up for a Bible camp in Lake Minnetonka in Minneapolis, and it was run by a Methodist organization, Youth Temperance Council. And they would have the people at camp all take vows never to drink. So I had taken a vow never to drink.
Mm. And you didn't violate that until you had the sake with
Right,
the
right.
Japanese farmer. Yeah, it's interesting how things change sometimes over time. So then we were in Fukuyama until
Fukuyama.
62.
5960. And in the meantime,
Sue was born in 59,
right,
and then Teresa was born in 62. Was she
right,
born in Fukuyama still?
right, but after we had been home there in between we were in Kansas.
You were in Kansas teaching at
Bethany College.
Bethany College in Lindberg, Kansas.
Right,
So you were there for a full year or just 9 months?
the
Or
whole year. We had actually petitioned not to go on furlough right away because Joanne was still good friends with this Dr. Takemasa. She helped at his hospital.
uh-huh.
At first I thought that was good to be related to that, but then as time went on, it seemed to take her farther away from me. And the mission board denied our result to stay longer. I don't know if they knew anything about that or not. So anyway, they asked me to teach, and I was a little uncertain about that at first, even though I had wanted to be a high school teacher, but I didn't have any experience teaching students.
But you must have liked it because you came back to it then later, huh?
Yeah, and I thought, well, if they wanted me to do it, why not try it? Because I had originally intended to teach. Because part of it, and I had intended to teach high schools. I had intended to teach college, no, not college, but high school students. That's what I intended to teach. So these were high school students that had just started college. Now that was my rationale, that I would still only be teaching high school students to begin with until they'd been in college for a while. I wasn't really teaching college students yet. And in my mind, that's how I rationalized it. That's how they seemed to me. They seemed to be like high school students, which they were until the week before they went to college.
Right.
And I liked teaching. That turned out to be something I liked.
And did you like missionary work again when you got back to Fukuyama then after that?
Yeah, I still was interested in continuing that.
But then there was kind of too much stuff going on between you and Mom, and
Right,
that's what ended up bringing you back then to the
Right.
States.
right.
And then you came back to Rock Island in 62.
62.
Was Teresa born in Rock Island or in?
And she was born in February of 62.
Before you came back.
Before we came back. She was born there in Fukuyama by a friend. It wasn't Dr. Takemasa, but a friend of his was the OB gynecology. We called her our bargain child because the prenatal care and the hospitalization, he used part of his own house as his hospital, and the postnatal natal care was $29.
Yeah, she's always been thrifty.
She was our bargain child.
Yep. Always the thrifty one.
Maybe that's how she turned out that way herself.
Yeah.
So when we got back to Moline, then the seminary surprised me. I was expecting to look for a call as a pastor, but the seminary then asked me if I would teach for them. That was kind of a little dilemma for me, because while I was at the seminary myself, there were several professors that we didn't think were any good. Don Berg and I and a couple other students. And we were always trying to wrestle up some petition to get them to resign and have the seminary hire new professors. And when they asked me to teach, they gave me the office of the main person that I had been trying to get rid of. So that was kind of spooky. When I sat down in his office.
You kind of ended up replacing the guy you wanted to get replaced.
Right.
with someone who knew what they're doing, but maybe you weren't quite so sure that you were that person.
I had a hard time. Then it was harder than deciding to teach at
Bethany.
Bethany College. But again, I finally rationalized it that when I was teaching seniors at Bethany College, this was no different than teaching first-year students at the seminary, which was true. So that went okay.
And is that around that time that you decided you wanted to go to get a PhD and go to the University of Chicago?
They said if you're going to be, if you like this, you're going to be teaching, you have to have a degree.
You need to have a PhD, at least a master's.
It would help me get a degree. The mission board would support my tuition, and the seminary would help me with, when I decided to study at the University of Chicago, the seminary arranged for me to travel back and forth for nothing to Chicago. I discovered that the railroads have super passes, that they have regular passes, but then there are super passes, and if you have a super pass, you have unlimited travel on the plane.
On the train.
On a train, so seminary professors, they can get those kind of super passes. So I paid just the tax of $1.50 whenever I went to Chicago.
Nice. But still, that was an awful lot of time. It took you like 10 years, didn't it?
9 years.
9 years to get that.
But in Chicago, that's about standard length of time.
Yeah, that's a lot
I
of.
was teaching, at the same time, so. And a couple of semesters off, but most of the time I was teaching.
Must have been a lot of work, though.
Yeah.
Why the University of Chicago?
They had a missions professor there. Not many universities have full-time missions professors.
That wasn't Marty, though.
No, but he was on my committee. Joseph Kitagawa, Martin Marty, and Pierce Beaver. Pierce Beaver was the missionary. Joseph Kitagawa was on it because of my Japanese connection.
Was he part of Japanese studies there or something?
Yeah. World religions. He was part of world religions. And I was interested in how Christianity fit in with the other religions. And so my title was actually Professor of World Missions and World Religions. And my part of it was how I thought missionaries could better relate to other world religions. And most missionaries, if you go back and study missionary work, have done a lot of study in other religions who are also more interested. In fact, a lot of mission boards wondered about the missionaries coming home because they were more Buddhist and Shintoist and Muslim than when they went out.
Yeah, probably.
And Harold Vogelar, he got fired as a missionary because he married a Muslim woman. His argument was, how could you get fired for loving the people that you were doing missionary work with?
Yeah, really. All right, let's take a break here.